And welcome in addition to having the Tennessee Star online, we're now doing radio with the Gill report across the state. And now we're adding a video component. And because we've got such a hot contested mayor's race in Nashville, we thought it would be wise to talk to some of the mayoral candidates, let you hear from them, not just about the issues, but who they are. And our first guest is State Representative Harold Love, Dr. Reverend
Yes,
Harold Love. We'll have to spend a whole 30 minutes just talking about all your credentials,
Yes,
but it is great to have you
my pleasure
with us.
to be here.
Lifelong Nashvilleian.
Yes,
Give us
sir.
a little bit of your background. It's fascinating.
Born here in Nashville, Tennessee, 1972. My father was in the state legislature from 1968 to 1994, and so my sister and I were pretty much raised in public service and advocacy. My mother worked at Tennessee State for 57 years. We also had an educational component guiding our belief system, and graduated from Tennessee State University and went to Vanderbilt University for a master's degree in theology, and just recently, December, completed a PhD in public policy from Tennessee State. So glad to be in the state legislature to serve these many years, and of course, being a lifelong Nashvilleian, have seen the city grow. I've seen all sorts of development occur, but also seen so many things happen that we can improve on in the city. So that's my story. My father really left a great impression on me as he would take me down to the legislature every day after school to really show me how government really worked well for people, and how if you were a good public servant, you could do great things for your constituency.
Because you grew up seeing how it works and sometimes doesn't work,
Yes, sir.
did it make you more enthusiastic to get into the political arena, or more wary and cautious?
There was a time in 1993, I was in college, and I had a very candid conversation with my father because I was getting close to graduation, and I was thinking about my career and my degree in economics and finance. I wanted to go into banking, and I asked my father, I said, look, you went into public service, but you had a job before you did that. What was it that propelled you into public service, and should I consider that? My father's advice to me was, he said, you get you a job after college, and if the people call you into public service, then you go, because that's what it's about. People saying to you, we want you to be our representative, we want you to speak for us, and that's the advice that I took. And so seeing him work, seeing great leaders from years past work, really made me appreciate the fact that if you are doing it for the right reason, then it can be very rewarding. But it's also the challenge of dealing with different constituencies, and sometimes people with different motives and different agendas that you also must compete with.
You've been in the legislative branch. As mayor, you would be in the executive branch. How do you see those different things, and how would you make that transition?
So the legislature is indeed a different thing from the executive branch, because you are really crafting legislation, you're crafting policy. The executive branch is supposed to carry it out. And one of the things that I was always mindful of when I was looking at bills to carry was, how would it be carried out? How would Nashville benefit from it? How would the state benefit from it? And there's a collaborative work that has to be done between the executive branch and the legislative branch to do that. So for me, the transition would simply be, I think, carrying out a lot of things that I've pushed for. A lot of the bills I've pushed for in the state legislature did help Nashville specifically. And I think emphasizing those pieces of legislation would be the first thing to do. Also, the benefit is this. I sit on Finance, Ways, and Means in the House. That gave me an opportunity to see the complete state budget inside and out, just not from the perspective of the governor's presentation for the state, but to really delve in, because we had every department come before us and testify about what their budget was. That's what an executive needs, is the chance to go and read a budget and see really what's going on in there, where the expenditures are, where there can be room for improvement, and that's one of the advantages I think I have from that perspective, is to be able to make that transition from legislative to executive.
The state has seen not only great growth across the state, but also the economic growth. Just a year or so ago, we had $1 billion surplus and $1 billion in new recurring revenue. As you look at Nashville with your finance background, and you're going, okay, how are we 17 million short in education? How are we misappropriated or lost 7 million?
Sure.
How are we having to cut budgets when you're seeing all this rapid growth? You have to be looking at this going, what are they doing over there?
Sure. I'll give you an example of one thing that I did this past session. As you know, we have General Hospital here in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was much conversation about its finances, whether it was functioning properly or not. And everyone was talking about it from the perspective of what they saw on TV, what they heard from reporters. What I did was went and got the joint annual report from the hospital to see how much they were spending out, how much was coming in. And when I saw that, I said, now, there's some stuff in here that people aren't talking about. There's some opportunities to increase their revenue And it's not just about increasing people who are in the beds in the hospital, but it's about cutting some costs and some expenditures. So that's the question one must raise when you look at the budget and do see that we're growing so much in Nashville. There's some disconnect in there, and there's an opportunity to see, are we taking advantage of our full opportunity to bring in more revenues and also cut expenses? Sometimes I think when we talk about budget shortfalls, people automatically look at, well, what can we do to increase revenue? And it may also be a thing of decreasing expenditures that are redundancies, right, in services provided. And it's not about anybody's job being lost, but about expenditures really being evaluated. So that's the thing that has to take place. But I think anybody who knows how Nashville's grown would be alarmed by the budget crisis we're having.
When you look at economic development, and again, we have it at the state level, and you'd be looking at it in the Nashville level, there's always that friction between where do you focus your priorities on growing local businesses, helping a guy that's got 5 employees grow to 7 or 10 or 12, versus bringing in some big out-of-state company where we spend a lot of tax breaks, we spend a lot of money to get them here. How do you find that balance?
So I think that the easy answer for many of us, and I say us, the Nashvillians, is to draw in a business. Everybody wants the city to grow.
The big ribbon cutting.
Right. They want to see the city grow. They want to see jobs come because they want to see the expansion of services, right? You think about Nashville when we did not have a professional football team, when we did not have a professional hockey team, or development downtown, right? Think about Nashville then and the efforts we made to draw businesses like Dale in. We gave them incentives, right? So now you have to balance that over and against how many jobs will companies actually bring when they bring their business here.
And at what cost per job?
Right, and how much do we reimburse them? $500 per job. What does that do? For that business? Well, it does incentivize them, but one could ask, could that money also be spent on that smaller business to say to them, let's maybe give you $10,000 to expand your business instead of $1 million for someone to bring a business here, and balance that and see what are the long-term benefits of supporting local business, because sometimes neighborhoods have great local businesses, and then you see that business cannot survive, and before you know it, a business that's been there for many years goes away because they just could not deal with not being able to hire people to expand the
Or the
business.
regulations, the taxes, or the other pieces.
Or someone offering them a huge amount of money for their location.
Right. And we again see the big, corporate big boxes coming in that drive out the small businesses from time to time. So, talking about the revenue, there's been a lot of focus recently on Rich Riebling, who has been through several mayors basically running the books. A lot of questions about what's being done there. One of your opponents in the mayoral race, Carol Swain, has called for him to be fired by Mayor Briley. Under Mayor Love, would he keep his job or not?
Under Mayor Love, everybody's job's going to be evaluated.
You sound like a new head coach.
Yeah, everybody's gonna be looked at and determine if they are doing their job and if their activities are in the best interest of the city. And this is something that I had experience with when I was able to come in and help a daycare here in Nashville, Tennessee. 18th Avenue Family Enrichment Center was started in 1934. They were having some bad economic times. They were losing about $10,000 a month. The board of directors came to me and asked me if I could come in and look at it and evaluate what could be done for it. I came in, looked at the books, looked at the employees, saw what was going on, and discovered that one particular employee was ordering an enormous amount of food, right, that didn't need to be ordered. It was driving the expenses up. And I had a conversation with that employee. I said, listen, you can't order all this food. We don't have that many kids we're servicing. You can't keep doing this. Well, she was just doing it because she was doing it on habit, because they had kids and then they ordered them, and if the kids needed, then they threw away the food. I said, this is waste right here. And you're wasting not just parents' money who's paying for their child care, but also government money because some of the kids were on vouchers. So I went in and trimmed that budget and got us on a plan to really do what was right. All that I'm saying is I think his job needs to be evaluated as long as everyone else's job in the mayor's office to see if they're doing the right thing.
I want to talk about two key things.
Sure.
One, we just had the transit vote that went down badly. You, among, I think, all the opponents except for Mayor Briley, opposed the transit plan. They support transit, but not that particular plan. How do you move from that being rejected so loudly by the voters all across the community, different ethnicities, different wealth levels? I mean, it was pretty uniform.
Sure.
How do you move from there to what is a good transit plan?
So one of the main oppositions I had was to the increase in grocery tax. And I reminded folks as many times as I could, when I voted for the Improve Act, I voted to reduce grocery tax from 5% to 4% statewide. And that was kind of the exchange we had for increasing gasoline tax. Well, the surcharge on sales tax would have put that 1% back on. I couldn't do that. I couldn't in good conscience vote for that when I just taken it off. One of the problems I also had was the fact that we weren't using all of our available taxes. A lot of folks don't know, but in 1988, the General Assembly gave every city and county in Tennessee the opportunity to either implement an impact fee or a new development fee for city growth, right? The only city that did not take advantage of that was Nashville. Of all the cities and counties in Tennessee, Nashville is the only one that has never implemented a development tax. So since we never implemented one, we couldn't increase it. We couldn't surcharge.
Would you advocate implementing one?
I would advocate implementing one from this perspective. It is a tax that we've never used, and including that tax could reduce the other tax that we're now going to be implementing, or we're going to implement in the transit referendum, which was local sales tax, rental car tax, hotel motel tax, and business tax. So if we were to look at using a new development tax, right, it would not be a harmful tax, but just to say, can you contribute to or pay your fair share to a new transit plan? So I think that's the first thing, is to explore that opportunity. Secondly, it's about communication. To go to every community that is a stakeholder, which is the entire city, and say, what would you like to see in a transit plan? And then how would you like to see it implemented in your neighborhood? The other thing is we never talked about much was the fact that it was always called a traffic solution when there are traffic solutions out there. It's an opportunity out there now to have the most advanced signal lighting we can in the nation. That, I think, would decrease traffic flow.
Potholes get a lot of attention too. I mean, you probably get more calls about potholes on I-40, I-440 than anything else. The city doesn't necessarily control that, but that's the area where people are seeing their axles busted.
Sure, and potholes are being repaired on 440 now, but we also have potholes in the city. We have potholes on city streets. So if I'm driving down D.B. Todd, which I do from time to time, and the road is bumpy, I'm slowing down. Well, if I'm slowing down and you're behind me, you're slowing down. And then the car behind you slowing down. And then there's ripple effect.
So it has a traffic impact.
It does, because I'm not going to be going 35 or 40 miles an hour down the street doing the speed limit. If there are potholes, if there are ripples in the street, I'm going to go 20 because I don't want to mess up my axle. I don't want to mess up the tire rim that I'm driving on. So I'm going to drive slower. That's one thing we never discussed, is the effect of potholes on traffic congestion.
There also wasn't a lot of discussion of the interaction between the mayor and the city and these suburban counties that are fast growing. None of that transit plan was going to really have any impact out there. How would you see your role as mayor to being a leader for Middle Tennessee to try and help some of these suburban counties still want to gravitate and bring their business and their bodies to Nashville and spend money, and at the same time not see that outflow? Cool Springs now has more private commercial office space under roof than downtown Nashville. You're going to continue to see that suck of money and investment out. As a mayor, how would you play a role in that?
That's one of the advantages I think I bring to this job, is my relationship with former legislators. Senator Ketchum is running for mayor of Rutherford County, right? He and I have already talked about, when we both get elected, having a conversation of reducing traffic from Rutherford County to Davidson County as mayors working together, because we've worked together before on bills in the legislature. You have to have a relationship with someone and trust them to be able to have the conversation and know that what you're working on is the best interest of both of your counties and cities. That's one thing we haven't done. And again, engaging all those county and city mayors is of prime importance, and going in and saying, listen, we've worked together before, let's work together now, because we know we have traffic coming in from Rutherford County, we have traffic coming in from Montgomery County and Clarksville, we have traffic coming in from Murray County, right? We have traffic coming in from Dixon County. It's about sitting down with these city officials, right, and saying, how can we work this out the best way we can? The other advantage I have is I currently sit on a committee called TASER, Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, where we have county officials and city officials trying our best to make sure that we do things not to harm counties and not to give cities an advantage. We had the broadband bill came out of TASER study because we wanted to make sure that rural counties got the best thing they could for broadband. It was a contentious issue, but because we had TASER study it, we knew we could do the best thing with it. So TASER could also, I think, help with that development.
We're going to talk more about education and some of the policy issues, but let's talk about politics for a few minutes. It's a political campaign. It is a sprint.
Yeah.
It's not even a sprint. It's a 10-yard dash.
Yeah.
You're being timed in the 40s in this one.
With no shoes on.
And the public isn't really interested right now. I mean,
yeah.
We're seeing early voting numbers right out of the blocks that are less so far that a lot of people vote daily in early voting.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you overcome the lethargy or the just, voters are just, they feel like they've been worn out. And you recently got endorsed by SEIU, the union. How do you make sure that any endorsement you get isn't like squeezing a balloon? You get squeezed over here, it pops out over here.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the politics of this race.
And I use the example of sprinting with no shoes on, because anybody who's ever run a city street or in a rural area with no shoes, it's a bit more painful, a bit more difficult, because it just is. This short race really is about making every meeting you can. It's about talking to everyone you can. Every vote does indeed count. I mean, really, literally, you're talking about meeting everybody you can. Endorsements do matter because they expose you to...
It gets you groups.
It gets you groups. The best thing that I can say about an SEIU endorsement for me is what they said about my activity with SEIU, and that I was always fighting for SEIU members not to have their work encroached on by the state legislature. Fighting for employees to still keep their jobs, right, and making sure that if we had an opportunity for increased wages, we could. I know sometimes there's a contentious conversation between labor unions and elected officials, and sometimes it can get to the point where it seems as if it's personal. For me, I encourage people to look at the endorsement process, and I myself respond to as many surveys as I can, even if my particular ideology may not line up completely with their situation of their ideology. My point is always to say this: if you have 10 issues and we can agree on 6, then we have a majority that we can agree upon. There may be 4 that we don't, but if we focus on those 4 that we don't, we'll never get anywhere. And one thing I think people in Nashville need to remember is this: we are all, I believe, as candidates, looking to do the best for the city. I don't think anybody's running to harm the city. But sometimes in these conversations, it does get a bit.
Well, you got to create division. You got to create differences.
Yeah, and I always tell folks, just because I'm pro me doesn't mean I'm negative you. And if I emphasize what I can do that you can't, that's fine. There may be something you can do that I can't, and you should emphasize that. But we should never get to the place where it is very contentious. And I think I developed that. Well, I have 4 sisters. And so I developed as a young man.
You're used to being told what to do.
or rather, used to negotiating and finding a solution, right? You got 4 older sisters. At some point, there's a negotiation that has to go on. And so for me, that's the piece when we talk about endorsement, the political nature of it. And I tell folks also, there's a difference between campaigning and governing. So as much as you run on issues and as much as you talk about what you're going to do, can you really do that?
But are you concerned that an SEIU union endorsement will make it harder for you to work with the business community, or vice versa? If somebody's endorsed by the business community, is that going to make the unions and the city workers leery?
I don't think so. And I would encourage people to look at my voting record and look at the things I've pushed for in my term in the state legislature. One thing that I'm giving credit for by others is the fact that my door is open to everybody. I allow everybody to come in there and have a conversation with me. We may not agree, but out of respect for you, number one, as a human being, right? And as a person interested in a policy issue, I'm going to sit there and listen to you very respectfully. And at the end, we may disagree, but I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm going to let you say your piece, and I ask you to also let me give my side of it and respect that, that's my position. And that is easier for me to do because I saw my father do it. I saw him open his door and allow folks to come in, and at the end and say, Representative Love, I know we don't agree, but I'm glad you let me in and have my say. And he would always say, that's what I'm here for, is to listen. That's the same approach I take.
Now in this sprint, and just between us, ignore them.
Right.
So how are you going to win?
I think that the best thing for me to do is this: turn out my base, number one, my particular district where I have represented for 6 years, turn that base out. Also present my credentials, not just from an experience perspective, but also from an educational perspective. Having a PhD in public policy does benefit me some because it speaks to the fact that I've studied how policy is made and how people can be brought together for coalition building. And I say this very intently. It is a short race, but it's also a short term. The only candidate...
You got to do this again,
almost
immediately.
But the only candidate who's ever been experienced in having policy being made is me. We have between January and April to get policy done in the General Assembly. The only person who has at least 6 years experience doing that is myself. That means that I'm used to making policy in a month period, 2-month period, 3-month period, and that's a quality that I bring to the job. Not knocking anybody else, but simply saying...
You're ready to hit the ground running.
I'm ready to hit the ground running because When we talk about bills that have impacted our city and our state, when we talk about policy, it's what I call a policy mind. It's about being able to bring in department heads and bring in other stakeholders and say, listen, we got a situation we overcome. How are we going to do this? Here are my suggestions. What should we do going forward?
Okay, final question. What is your top priority? As a mayor, if you're going to say, I'm going to be the mayor known for blank, how do you fill in that blank?
Education. Our high school graduates who choose to go to college, only 24% of them graduate from college. Now, anybody who hears that number and lets it flow back into their mind knows we can't succeed as a city if only 24 of our high school graduates who choose to go to college are graduating. That means they come back to the city and they are not going back to college. And I know that college is not for everybody, but for those who choose to go to college, right? Some folks want to go straight from high school and get a job, and that's fine. We have programs in the state to allow a person to go and get a 2-year degree, but even those persons aren't finishing the 2-year degree. We have to increase our educational excellence of our high school graduates. And if I could add 2 things, not just education, but also safety. A recent Washington Post report said that America's prisons, said, where are America's prisoners born? And it said of all the zip codes in the entire nation, where you're most likely to go to jail if you're born in a zip code, is 37208. That's North Nashville. That's where I was born, right? And we talked about this earlier, the fact that this problem's been happening for years because the report looked at people who've been in jail since the 1980s. So
There's something interesting in crime in Nashville. We talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
We've had crime problems and shootings and murders for a long time in relatively small areas. All of a sudden it's expanded into Green Hills, so now it's a major crime issue. It should always be considered an issue.
But when it happens in 208, I remind folks, if this is happening in 208, it's not going to end in 208. It's going to go to 217. It's going to go to 203. So we have to attack both education and safety issues. And
Because they really fit together.
They really do. Because, again, I say it, if the report says that if you're born in 37208, you're more likely to go to jail than any other person in the nation. That speaks volumes, and we should be alarmed about that and try to find ways to mitigate that.
Harold Love, Jr. with us, Reverend, Doctor, State Representative. How do people reach you? How do they get in touch with you and help in this few weeks left till the election?
Visit the website lovefornashville.com, LOVEFOR Nashville.com. Also, they can call my phone, 615-477-LOVE or 615-477-5683. They can reach me also on Facebook, Love for Nashville, Harold Love for Mayor. Reach me on Twitter, at Harold Love Jr., and reach out to us. And I'm open to answer any questions about any concerns that one has.
Well, we appreciate you being with us. We'll have the Love Mayor. I mean, that's going to make us nationally well known, and we already got Love Circle. We've got all sorts of love stuff here in Nashville. So, and we love the Predators.
Yes, sir.
And of course, you're not for the Winnipeg Jets.
No, tonight we have to win tonight.
It is a big win. Yeah. Hey, great to have you with us. And we're going to continue our series. We're going to talk to some of the other mayoral candidates, and let us know. Go to TennesseeStar.com. Let us know what you think about this series, and we'll do more of this as we're heading into this big political year. A lot of candidates looking for time, and we're happy to let them talk to you through the Tennessee Star. I'm Steve Gill. We'll be back soon, so go back to the Tennessee Star and find out what we're covering today.